Okay. Cascading strategy, yes. And like, my talk is probably going to be very different from all the other talks that are like very information heavy. I'm just going to be presenting a story. So for that, how many of you love it? Well, I think I saw maybe a few, handful. Okay. How many of you can't stand it at all? Okay. So like everybody is like, okay, we have to deal with it, right? Well, you can't ignore it for sure. I'm a front-end architect at Smallcase. How many of you have heard of Smallcase? How many of you are investing in it? So if you're not, talk to me, I'll convince you to invest in small cases. Well, anyway, I look after the front-end team and I get to solve interesting problems. So if you're interested in talking about small case, how we do on the engineering side or the finance side, please do come say hi to me after the talk. I also put out a lot of like wacky and some functional CSS work on CodePen. So if you're interested, like you can go find me out on CodePen. But all in all, it won't be false to say that I certainly owe my career to CSS. It did wonders to my career as a skill that not a lot of people were, like keen to gain expertise on. Right? It made me known in my circle as the CSS guy. Yeah, like all of this that you are seeing, for example, this train, the electromagnetic waves, everything, all of that is just pure CSS, right? So looking at things like I build with CSS like this or other things, if you check it on internet, I think it's pretty clear that I love CSS. And it gives me immense power to express myself as like as an artist. It helps me put out my ideas onto a canvas that I can iterate on fluently, right? So it's my serenity in a way. I always used to wonder about like how this simple piece of technology came to be and who thought of this, like how did it evolve, all of that. So I think I have a story today that might give you some of that information. And to know this, we have to go back in time, like a really long time. In the time scale of internet, we will have to go back to the Big Bang, literally, the dawn of the web. Can anyone tell me who created the web? Who created HTML? When and where? Anybody? Okay. All right. So it was this guy, Tim Berners-Lee. Any of you have heard this name? Okay. All right. But he looked more like this though when he created it, and that's the computer where he's showing off World Wide Web for the first time, right? Now, why did he create it? Well, to share scientific papers inside CERN.
Now, I've been helping them on the policy side of things, and now I recently moved to Hyderabad, so I've been helping organize the meetup. Is anyone interested in introducing themselves?
I'm Mustafa Ahmed. I'm from Hyderabad. I'm recently graduated my bachelor's from IT, CBIT College in Gandipet, and I'm starting my career in as a software engineer in DuPont, which is an manufacturing and industrial company. And I've started open sourcing recently, back 6 months, so I'm loving it. So I was finding a community which can help me grow. So I'm here. I would love to meet new people here, and please, it's really good to see you all here, and it will be nice. Hoping you see you again.
Yeah, this works. Tim Berners-Lee is back up on the screen again. As I was saying, he actually created it in CERN, where he wanted to share scientific papers and make sure like people are able to do that within CERN and outside of CERN. So that's why he created it, and it sort of reflects in the first web page that was ever published. Is this visible to you? Like you don't have to read the content, but is the structure, the colors and everything visible to you? Okay, so if you look at it, it's a pretty simple web page, right? It doesn't have much. It has some text, it has some links which are in blue, and if you click on those links, it takes you to some other pages, right? It was simple but revolutionary for the time that it was invented in. It was exactly 6th of August 1991, a couple of months before the speaker of this talk was born. So now let's take a look at the print media, what it looked like at that time. So the print media, given the time it had on Earth, had already evolved quite a bit on layout, colors, typography, on basically letting the authors express what they want, right? In however format they want. Actually, we used to play in childhood, right? The last line of that was, I think, Shuru karo Antakshari leke Prabhu ka naam. So I'm just starting this with Prabhu ka naam. All right, so I was talking about print media, and this is what the print media looked like at that time, right? If you compare it to the web that I showed earlier, right, you will see that it was absolutely gorgeous. Right? Computers did not have all of this crazy thing at that point in time. Like you could not do layouts, you could not do colors, typography, or any of this crap. And if you are not able to figure out what I'm talking about, well, there are rounded corners, there is absolute positioning, there are shapes, that all of that was possible in print media. That wasn't available in the web. So, I mean, it's evident that at that time, the web wanted to establish itself as a publishing medium for content, but if it wanted to do that, it would have to catch up with the print media a lot, right? The web would have to add support for all the things that print media could already do, and then do some extra magic for it to become popular. Now, you might say, hold on, well, in the first web page, that wasn't just plain text, right? It could have been simple text with all same size, the links could have been just black, but that wasn't the case, right? I mean, we saw header, which looks slightly bigger, we saw links which are blue, and that is some style applied to it, right? So, I mean, there are headers and a bunch of few things, but if we needed to support more of these things, we had to come up with some sort of framework to do it, right? So very early on, Tim Berners-Lee, who I'm going to be calling TBL in short, TBL and browsers figured out that all the text cannot just look same, right? It cannot be this mundane. And the web was created as a publishing platform, and a lot of folks saw its potential beyond just being a platform to publish scientific papers. So TBL understood that the need is there for styling things, but he said like we should just leave it to the browsers, okay? And that's how user agent style sheets were born. So if you, let's say you create a simple HTML page, you write hello world, and you go and inspect that page, if you look at the styles applied, you will see in your elements panel on the right side it says user agent style sheet. Now this is where it was born, right? So now you didn't have them as exposed as they are today, because obviously there weren't any dev tools and all of that, but they were there. This is the original spec that Tim Berners-Lee and the browsers came up with, where it said HTML authors need to write style sheets only if they want to suggest a specific style for their documents. Each user agent, which is often the web browser or client, will have a default style sheet, which is what the first web page looked like with headings, that presents a document in a reasonable but arguably mundane manner. Right? So any web page, even if you do today, it's just Times New Roman, headers, blah, 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 links are blue, that's it. Nothing more than that. But then this is amazing as a long-term goal, right? Because TBL had created HTML with the goal of separating content from styling. And that was revolutionary for the time being, right? And to be honest, that's how the internet has seen things forward, and it has worked out for around 30 years now, right? How cool is that? So anyway, leaving styles to the browsers created a problem though. If you can see it, these are all different, 5-6 different browsers that existed at that time. One of them is called Mosaic that you can read. There is something called Erisa, there is Argo, there are other like web browsers that existed. And the stupid thing was you couldn't change a damn thing here. Like if you are seeing a blue screen, it's just blue. If the text is blue, text is blue. You couldn't do anything because browsers had full control of how you would style things. Now, because of this, there was tension among authors, as in the people who are building websites, and then the implementers who are implementing the browser, that who should be in the ultimate control of styles, like who should have the liberty to style things or not. Now, if you remember, like I talked about this one of these browsers, right? So there was this one guy called Mark Anderson, right? He also like eventually became the guy who built Mozilla, the browser. But here we have a conversation where somebody asked, hey, like there is a line which Mosaic is rendering, isn't that a bug? And Lynx is rendering it correctly. The answer is, it's not a bug, it's a rendering choice made by the browser as we kneel before the altar of the haha, you cannot control what your document looks like philosophy. Dear sinner, I repeat, dear sinner, you can take solace in the fact that Mosaic is putting a blank line at the start of all top level lists, including yours, entirely on purpose. Like, this is how much say you had as an author at that time, right? So anyway, the same guy, Mark Anderson, went on to work on Mozilla, and he was also the person who coined the HTML tag called center, which we used a lot earlier. Anyway, just 3 days before Mosaic could go live with a beta version, Hakon, who is also the protagonist of our entire story, enters the scene and introduces the world to the first draft of CSS. Right? It was pretty immature, to be honest. I mean, it laid just the foundational idea, but it did that very well. Right? It was 10th of October 1994. What's crazy is that a lot of ideas from this draft are actually in use today. So if you have ever done something like link rel equals to style sheet, it was part of this first spec that was written in 1994. I mean, I look at these relics and totally like the fanboy in me goes, wow, that's just beyond words. Now there were other proposals too, like these. There were lots of people trying to figure out a way to style things in the browsers, but Hakon's idea stood out, the idea of cascade, because what he had done is he had looked at things from an empathetic point of view of the authors and the users. It took into account that on web, if you wanted to publish something, the ultimate control couldn't be solely with the author or the implementer. There had to be some sort of balance between them, and you would have some sort of control between telling, okay, this is how much I control this or that, right? So this cascaded nature of mentioning styles is what won over the other specifications. Right, anyway, but like when it was presented, people thought it was just too simple. They wanted a full-fledged programming language to style documents. In fact, Mosaic, the browser, was just taking your CSS and converting it to JavaScript somehow internally and applying styles. But then CSS said, like, just hold my beer, I'm going to run the other way, become as simpler as possible, and become declarative instead of being a programming language. And by becoming declarative means you just have statements that say something. You do not have loops, or you do not have any other programmatic affordances there. Anyway, it was first demoed in a browser called Argo, made by Bert Boss, who is on the left, and then in 1994, along with Hakon Vuonglu, who is on the right side. So these two guys, yeah, amazing stuff in 1994. They showed it again on 1995 in WWW conference, but then what happened is the discussion became really political about the user and author control and everything. But ultimately, they kept on working in it, and in 1995, W3C was born. How many of you know what W3C stands for? Very few people. Well, it's the World Wide Web Consortium that has all the people who actually decide how the internet is built, how the web infrastructure is built. 10 minutes? More? Okay. Oh, good enough time. Yeah. So anyway, what happened is W3C was formed, and big companies like Microsoft and Netscape were joining the W3C. Thomas Reardon, a guy from Microsoft, endorsed and pledged that it is going to support CSS in Internet Explorer. Nobody as a company had pledged that by that time. What happened is there were two major corporations, corporations who were like spinning out browsers. Number one is Microsoft with Internet Explorer and Netscape with Netscape Navigator. And once Microsoft says, yeah, we are going to support CSS, everybody had to get on board Netscape Navigator to do it because it was popular. And if it did not agree to the CSS spec, things would have been quick. I wouldn't be talking to you. You would have a much better time sitting at your home. So anyway, among all the battles, the company agreed to ship CSS as a standard. And in 1996, CSS 1 came out. 1996. I was in probably what, like 5-year-old at that time. Yeah. Okay, anyway, the competition grew among the vendors and all of them wanted to be on top of their game, right? They wanted to be spec compliant and they built things so fast that they led to more bugs than the features that were present in CSS. How many of you are old enough to work on IE8? Nobody. Oh man, you're living the time of your life. So if you have ever worked on IE, to make one style work in every version of IE, you had to add different sort of prefixes, some magical prefixes, and make sure it gets picked up. Right? And anyway, those are the times that are gone. On a side note, this is how the evolution of Internet Explorer logos happened. If anybody remembers Internet Explorer, and you will see that from 1996 to 2011, the logo came almost full circle. Right? So, design for you there. Anyway, fast forward to today, CSS has become an integral part of web and by extension humanity in a way which is almost impossible to get out of it. Right? It has become so much more capable and the possibilities of what you can do with CSS are virtually limitless. There are entire books that are built and published in CSS, not about, in CSS. There is a book called CSS Secrets by Liavru, which was entirely written in HTML. All the stylings for the pages and prints was done in CSS. It came out as a physical book, right? And it keeps becoming better and better with all the things that you can do now, and all of those things are listed. Some of them are layouts, media queries, container queries, gradients, columns, shadows, anything that you can ask for, right? It has also sorts of become a new canvas for people who want to adopt this art form like I have. And there are people who have chosen to build things like realistic figures, well, explain the solar system, or just build something for fun, right? So it has, I would say it has become successful from a point of view that people have chosen it to express themselves. Right? People are doing fine art with it. And let me tell you, when I say this is something that was hand-coded in CSS, I'm not exaggerating, because this is how it looks like when you inspect it. Right? And this is fine art, absolutely fine art, a copy of a painting that was made by a GitHub user called Cyan Harlow. She has amazing work done. Right, so all in all, CSS, the way I see it, has clearly won as an art form as well. Now this is a photo of Bert and Hakon together in CSS Day 2017. I sometimes actually wonder and smile like how it would have looked like when they actually presented the CSS1 draft in 1994 and then 5. A great deal of internet's fate was written on that same day, right? So ultimately it's a story about how having empathy towards the stakeholders in the ecosystem and long-term vision towards the thing that you are passionate about can do wonders for the platform, for everybody. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Praveen. That was a very interesting deep dive into CSS. Anybody have any questions? I think we have time for maybe one question. Digging deep into CSS and trying to put together this talk. Yeah, if there are no questions, we can move on to the next speaker. Again, you can definitely pick Praveen's mind at the networking break. Hopefully, he'll hang around for the, yeah.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks so much for being the best audience ever.